up, you guys? It's Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm Angela Yee, and Billy McFarland is here with us today. Now, if you don't know who Billy is, he is the founder of the Fyre Festival, which is coming back.
Yes.
And we've seen a couple of different documentaries about it. But, you've been through a lot since we first met, like you said, about 7 years ago.
Yes, you were in the Fyre office 7 years ago down in Tribeca. I think you said your office used to be next door. So
I was actually, all right, so let's break it down from the beginning, because Fyre, when you guys first started, it was really an app, right?
Yeah, we tried to build an app to allow anybody to book music artists for appearances. So kind of like picture like an Airbnb or an Uber for talent.
Yeah, which was, by the way, a great idea initially, right? Because that's what it was supposed to be first.
And then got distracted with the festival.
Yeah,
messed it up.
but I think people don't realize that. They just know the Fyre Festival. They don't know that there was bookings that were already going on, right? So you guys had already, prior to
we had the app before the festival, yeah. Like, as you know, it's so hard to book talent, and 7 years later it still is, right? Like, especially in the music industry, there are so many managers and agents and various middlemen. So we tried to create a tech platform that would cut through that and allow people like me, who's a young entrepreneur, to actually get in touch with and book talent for good business opportunities. Yeah,
that's actually why I initially was having a meeting at the office, because it was initially just about the app, about booking talent and things like that. And then the Fyre Festival idea came up.
Yes.
Now, whose idea was that?
It was actually a high school friend of mine. We literally took this small 4-seater airplane to the Bahamas. We ran out of fuel, landed on a remote island, and we were there, and he said, you should totally do a music festival here for all of your customers. So it's his fault. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, high school friends will have these grand ideas.
Exactly. So, yeah.
And prior to that, because we do know you as an entrepreneur before actually starting Fyre, you've had other ventures before that, right?
Yes.
Which, by the way, after this all happened, people went back to those ventures and they were like, oh, he has been a fraudster all this time. He did X, Y, and Z. But talk about the ventures that you had as an entrepreneur before launching Fyre.
Sure. I started my first company in 7th grade. I had 3 full-time employees at 13. And I got in trouble when one of my employees sent me an invitation to his wedding. My parents opened up the mail, and it's like, why is this grown man inviting you to his wedding? You're 13 years old.
What was that business?
I was a web hosting company, so I helped local businesses put their website online. This is back in like 2004, 2005, so like way back in the early internet days.
Okay.
And then fast forward, how I really got my start in New York was building a company called Magnesis, which was trying to make a black card for young kids in New York City.
Okay.
And we created this like thick hunk of black metal, and we would take your blue Chase card or your red Bank of America card and reissue it as this like really cool black Magnesis card. And then had all these benefits and experiences based around the card. One of them were these private concerts, and that's kind of how I started meeting all these music artists, by trying to book talent to perform as a way to kind of give back to all my customers.
Okay, and I think one of the main things to understand is that this whole situation didn't start off because people are like, oh, he was scamming people, but it started with good intentions. It wasn't like, okay, I'm planning to do something not the right way. You were planning to do something that you thought would be something innovative and creative. You guys did things even like with wristbands where you wouldn't have to have cash at the festival. It would be these wristbands that you could use to pay for everything while you were there. It was planes that were bringing people in. But things ended up going left. Now, as you guys were planning this festival, it felt like one things that I saw on the documentary was that it was happening too fast, right? And you even were told, like, I think you should postpone this and do it at a later date. Why did you not say, maybe I should?
I think that was the worst honest mistake I made, was trying to build a city in 4 months on a remote island. And I was 24 years old. I was like young and wanted it all like now. And if someone said it takes 2 weeks, it sounded like 10 years for me at that time.
Right.
I didn't know how to slow down. I didn't know how to be patient, and I didn't know how to listen to help. Ultimately, the crime was actually lying to investors. It wasn't the festival itself. So even if the festival was awesome, which clearly it wasn't, I still would have gone to jail because I lied to investors.
So you valued the company, I think, at $90 million or something.
Yeah, and it wasn't worth that. Sorry.
And it wasn't worth that. Yeah. The fact, though, that investors really believed in you at 24 years old, what do you think that comes from? Because I know how hard it is to try to get investors. And just to be honest, and with everything going on with the Fearless Fund, shout out to Ari and Simone, we were talking about this today. They have a VC fund that really specifically targets Black women.
Okay, amazing.
And it's really hard. Black women get the least lowest amount of VC funding. For sure. And it's really hard when we're trying to get money and, get people to invest in us. But you were able to get people to invest millions of dollars. What do you think it is about you that people were really willing to buy into what it is that you were doing? doing?
I think the biggest misconception is that I woke up one day, said our company is worth all this money, and people gave me money. That's not how it worked. I think the crime was actually probably worse than that. I had businesses since I was a teenager, so I had built up trust with, let's say, a dozen or so investors over literally 10 years. And they saw small wins, they saw small failures along the way. And after 10 years, when I came to them and said, hey guys, like, this is going to be the biggest business yet, they weren't in a position to question me because they had seen all of the work for literally a decade. So I think what I really did was I abused the trust that these people had in me. And that's probably worse than meeting someone like, hey, like, here's a fake spreadsheet. So I think it was more about building a relationship for 10 years, which is fucking hard, and then violating it all by lying.
Okay, and then you did end up getting sentenced to go to jail.
Yes.
And you served 4 years, is that correct?
Yep, served 4 years.
And I saw that you actually spent time in solitary confinement as well. So even in jail, you still were violating
Still getting in trouble.
The rules. So talk about solitary confinement and what that experience was like.
I did a podcast from the prison payphone.
Did you know you couldn't do that?
It wasn't really against the rules, which actually made it worse because they didn't know what to do. So I did the podcast. The trailer came out online, and then an hour after the trailer came out, they came and grabbed me. Like, yeah, this is not happening.
Well, damn.
Yeah, so I did 7 months in solitary for the podcast.
7 months?
I think the worst part was, like, you didn't break any rules, but you can't really do this either, so we're not really sure what to do. So you're just going to sit here for a while until we figure it out.
That's a long time, 7 months.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to make it illegal to make people be in solitary confinement for periods of time.
I hope so. I really hope so.
That long. Now, I want to talk to you about your experience there. Your first day going in, when you had to turn yourself in, what was that like for you mentally, everything that was going on?
Really hard. And I think, like, my biggest shock of prison was how behind it is culturally. I think it felt like, the movies from the 1940s where, like, even like the lines for food, it's like Hispanic people here, white people here, black people here, and you can't violate that. And, like, as someone who grew up in, like, as a young kid in New York, which is probably, more liberal than the rest of the country, like, experiencing that was like the biggest cultural shock for me. I felt like I was in a movie from 80 years ago. And
for you going on it, like, when you knew that day, I'm going in, what was going on in your head?
I didn't know how long it was going to be when I was arrested, so I think it was more of the fear of the unknown was probably, like, the biggest factor. And at that time, I was trying to survive by the day. Like, literally with the Fyre Festival, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd have someone tell me how much money we had to pay our various employees or vendors that day, or else the festival would be failed. So I was living in this, like, do or die by the day mentality. So I couldn't fathom, like, what 1 year, 2 years would be. And then when I was ultimately sentenced to 6 years, I just couldn't picture like how long that really was.
You know what I was thinking, too, at the time of the festival, because I remember initially talking to one of the people who actually worked in the office, right? Like I said, I had the meeting, and he was like, I think maybe don't come the first weekend, come the second weekend.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Because they did want me to, like, initially the conversations were about influencer marketing, and I want to talk about influencer marketing with you in a second, too, because I feel like Fyre kind of changed the game when it comes to influencer marketing and the rules around it. So we'll talk about that in a second. But he was like, listen, I want you to come, but I think you should come the second weekend because it's feeling like a little, I'm not sure what's going to happen. When did you realize this is kind of snowballing and it's not going to work?
I think great question. And, like, people don't believe me, but it was the night before the festival was when I first realized this probably wasn't going to work. A big storm came in the night before.
Oh, that's right. And all the FEMA tents got wet.
All the tents got wet. The mattresses got wet. And we had our core, 10 people there who were all more senior kind of like manager types. And then I look around and it seems like they all drank this magic potion and all fell asleep at exactly the same time. They, passed out on the couches, on the carpets, on the tables. I'm like, wow, like, you could just, like, literally feel the energy getting dragged out of the room. And that was the first moment where I knew this was not going to go as planned. And
then I think you had a lot of artists that were booked to come and perform. I think Blink-182, were they the first ones to pull out?
They were the first ones to cancel.
Okay, so when they canceled, what were your thoughts when that happened? Were you like, okay, maybe we should tell these other artists, it's not happening? And this is a bunch of questions, and did people get paid?
So I think there were 32 total artists.
Good Lord.
30 of them were paid in full. And the last 2 were paid for the first weekend. So every artist was paid. I think we paid like $5.5 million to artists to perform. So they were all paid.
And I kind of remember Kanye was supposed to be there.
So Good Music was technically one of the headliners.
Okay.
We did not advertise Kanye specifically, but
Listen, I remember
fingers
those
crossed,
rumblings.
right? Yeah,
I remember some
fingers
things
crossed.
about cash being paid, and so
back in my bad days.
yeah, I mean, and that would have been a huge get for you, obviously,
Yeah,
if
for
that
sure.
could have potentially happened. All right, so influencer marketing. So another big story that came out of this whole festival was that these influencers ended up, I don't know if they got sued, but there was a lot of conversations about people getting paid. I remember they said Kylie Jenner got like $250,000 for one post. All right. And so I want to know what your thoughts are now, because it really did change the game as far as we've seen it happen with cryptocurrency, where there were certain celebrities who were endorsing things and they're held accountable for these products that they're endorsing. So when this happened, a lot of people were holding these influencers accountable. You guys had this whole campaign and you had some of the top people, posting on social media with the most followers. Now, tell me now in retrospect, when you think back to how everything happened, you're out on the other side of it. What are your thoughts about influencer marketing and how that needs to be regulated?
I think it's very hard for talent to judge an opportunity, right? If all these large name investors are on board, all these large brands are sponsoring it, I don't know how the talent who sees 100 opportunities a day is supposed to do better due diligence than these other financial partners.
Okay.
So I think one of the hardest things for me, sitting in jail and the local sheriff would have to come to the federal prison to give me my my court papers, once a week, updating me on the case. I think the biggest surprise for me was I at least emotionally felt like they were going after the wrong people to, sue an influencer who was paid to do something, and they saw all these other names who were approving it. Like, it's really tough for that person to know better.
Right.
And I felt bad for the talent when I think the onus is not on them to do the due diligence at that level.
But I guess the hashtag ad and regulations like that.
That's all changed now.
That is, that was that. You think that was directly because of that?
I think the FTC officially passed a law after, but in reality, this is back in 2016 when we did the Orange Child campaign. That was a wild, wild west days of Instagram marketing, right? There weren't all these micro influencers. There wasn't like TikTok at this scale. There was a couple thousand celebrities everybody followed. That was pretty much like how it worked. Now there's, 1 million smaller influencers. So the game has totally changed, and I think the rules have caught up a little bit.
Now, we all know, of course, JaRule was your partner. A lot of people in the hip-hop community had jokes about that with the Fyre Festival. And when is the last time you guys have even had a conversation?
I think when I was shortly after I was arrested, when I was on bail. And my lawyer's like, you have to stop talking to him.
Okay. So it wasn't anything, like the conversation wasn't anything where was he angry? Do you hold yourself accountable, or do you feel like, because you guys were partners, do you feel like he is equally responsible, or do you feel like, the onus is kind of on you as the person who conceived this and then brought him on?
I think responsibility definitely on me. I was certainly in charge of the fundraising, so it wasn't like other people were like, "Hey, let's make up numbers to raise money." Like that was all on me.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's been tough though. I did call him out to a charity boxing match to pay back people who are owed.
I saw you did that karate combat, right?
I had my first fight ever, 5 days ago, last Thursday, so my head still hurts. So.
And you did win, by the way. So
somehow
you did get a win. So there's a win right there.
And Joe Rogan was front row in the audience.
Please talk to me about that. So you did this karate combat. How much did you win from that?
It wasn't crazy.
It wasn't crazy? Okay.
It wasn't crazy, but I'm giving a large portion of it back to people who are owed. I'm giving my full knockout bonus back to people who are owed. I knew I was going to jail, and I wanted to get ready for jail. So I was introduced through a friend to this incredible Muay Thai coach, which is basically a form of kickboxing.
So you're trying to get ready for jail.
I was trying to get ready for jail.
Just in case you had to do some Muay Thai on somebody.
Yeah, this great coach took me in and taught me for 6 months before jail. And then as soon as I get out, I call him up, and he's like, if you're going to do this for a good cause, I'll help you.
Well, thank God you won.
I know.
You kind of fight like me. I'm not going to. I'm going to just keep it real.
Is that good or bad?
Now, how did they treat you when you got to jail? Because clearly, you were, your story was a very celebrity story. So when you got to jail, people knew who you were. So how was it as far as interacting with people and how they treat you?
I think it took me 6 months to learn the rules. It's all right, you're supposed to sit here, you're supposed to walk there. It took me a little bit to understand that, when in Rome, right, I have to kind of abide by the cultures that are there. I think it was fine. I think I met a surprisingly number of really good people who I didn't expect to meet. And I think overall, if you take away the people who I hurt, it was definitely the best experience of my life. But you can't you can't weigh that with the harm that was caused.
You know who I think people felt the worst for? The people on the island who lost money, the caterer. And I know they did a fundraiser and did manage to raise some money.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
And they did give some of those funds back to some of the other people, because there were definitely a lot of people who put their all into, and also people who thought they were going to make money. So sometimes, like, when money's about to come in, it's a great thing for you. But one person also who I feel like, and I don't know if he still works with you to this day, Andy King.
Yeah, we're still in touch. I think Andy did a fundraiser for the Bahamas and raised a ton of money, which is awesome. But going back to your first point there, like, that was my biggest learning, is that fraud isn't, the victims aren't always clear, right? It's like, you might have invested and you were hurt, but there were 10 people who were relying on you who were hurt because of that, like, I don't know. And initially it's like, oh, I never met that person, or I didn't know that person. How could they be mad at me? But like, now that I've seen, like, it's just not just the immediate victims, like the sphere of people who are hurt is much larger. I think that's what makes the crime so bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was devastating to see that. It was sad. Like, when I definitely watched both documentaries because it was really interesting to me to see how this whole thing unfolded. I actually knew people who went there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of my good friends, Jason, he was sending me like video footage of everything that was happening. He was actually at the party where there was no water but lots of champagne.
Okay, good.
So I know Andy King got some of the water through, but he was there and he was showing me, he was sending me footage of them like partying, dancing. It looked like it was about to be a good time.
Okay.
And he was like, we're asking for water, but they don't have
any water.
All they have is champagne. And people were like literally dancing on the tables. But that was before all the festivities were set to begin. But let's go back to Andy for a second.
Yep.
When you saw his interview that he did on I think it was it the Netflix documentary that he was on? Is that a true story? You asked him to...
So I learned about this story in jail when a prison guard comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, Billy." He never calls me Billy, so I knew something was wrong right away. He's like, Did you pay a guy to suck some official's dick for water? And I look at him like he had 10 heads. Like, so he's like, "You could tell me, it's okay." So I'm looking at this guy, I'm all nervous. I'm like, "What's going on?" And so I think it was more of a game of telephone that got taken out of context.
So you think somebody said, and maybe I don't know, but that's a crazy story for people who didn't see it. Andy King was like, "We had to get this Avion water through. It was going to cost $175,000. And Billy was like, "Hey, I need you to go down there and suck some dick to get this water through." And he said he went and got some mouthwash.
Crazy.
And was ready to do it.
Gladly did not happen.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
Listen, but the one thing I will say, you need that man to work for you no matter what.
Because
he is definitely a person that is. And the way that he told the story, I was like, this is, I think, absolutely insane. Now, you're trying to do a Fyre festival too.
If there were 10 Andy Kings, Fyre never would have failed. So
whatever we have to do to make this happen.
Work,
so Fyre Festival Part 2. You've already sold tickets?
Yes, we did a pre-sale for Fyre Festival 2. It's going to be in the Caribbean next year. We're announcing the date and location this summer.
Okay.
The biggest difference this time is that I'm not in charge, which kind of sucks.
So
right?
You're not having your hands on the money. It's not going through you.
Can't touch the money. I can't touch the logistics.
Is that regulation, or is that you deciding, let me remove myself from?
Probably. I think it was our concept, but we had to get it approved. So got it approved. There is like a third-party festival company who all they do is festivals, who's actually in charge. They basically, have 51%. We have 49%, and they call the shots. But I still get to do like the marketing and hopefully some like the wild adventures on site.
Now, some people would have been ashamed after something like this happened, right? But you have faced it head on, and you actually did interviews for the Hulu documentary, as well. Now, and you got paid for that, because I remember reading.
I got paid for the Hulu doc, yes.
All right, you got paid
for
for that.
Yeah.
So did you do that because you were like, I'm getting a check and I need this money to be able to?
Yeah, at the time I was on bail. I was going to jail soon, and I needed cash. So,
so you needed the cash.
They gave me like 150, 200K, whatever it was, and I needed the money, so I did the interview. Yeah.
Okay. And, at any point, did you feel like I need to do my own documentary from my own point of view?
Absolutely. So we are filming one right now.
Oh, okay.
I did not learn my lesson because I'm not in charge of it. So there's like a third-party company doing it, but I think they are more fair. Hopefully they're more fair. So
which one did you like better? Because there was a debate.
I didn't watch them.
You didn't watch them?
I didn't watch them.
Wow. Would you ever? You think it's just too traumatizing for you to watch that?
I think I would still focus on the wrong things. Like if someone said something I didn't agree with, I'd be like, "Oh, I didn't say that, or I didn't do that." I think I'd lose sight of like what the actual issues were and just get mad about little things. So. And
you did have the marketing company, Fuck Jerry.
Yeah.
That was working with you. What's your relationship with them now? Because they did actually one of the Netflix documentary.
Yeah, they produced a documentary. I don't like them. I think they did not do it fairly. So Yeah, I'm
Okay,
not
but you
happy.
didn't see it, so
I didn't see it, but we had certain agreements in place that they didn't live up to, in my opinion.
Okay, well, fair enough. I mean, that can't be easy. But when you think about doing your own documentary, what angle are you going to take from that?
So the new documentary we've been doing is basically, it started the day I got out of jail and trying to get back to work. And I think it started with this dream that I would leave, get a phone, and have 100 people who were willing to take my phone call. And the reality was it wasn't like that. There was maybe 2 or 3 supporters on the first day, and it's been 2 years now. So it's kind of been this grind to get back to life. And I think we're finally there. We have a good foundation. We have a real company doing the festival. Our Broadway musical is getting made, which is going to be pretty cool. And so we're getting back to
I
life.
saw that you have a Broadway musical, and that's another third party.
Another
doing
third
that.
party, yeah.
Okay.
Very
I go to
little
Broadway
no role.
plays all the
Oh,
time.
really?
I just went to one a couple of days ago.
Nice.
I went to go see Home, and I'm about to go see The Wiz, and of course The Notebook, and all of those
Okay,
on
so
Broadway.
you'll come with me for the first premiere for the
Ooh,
Fyre
I got to
one.
see
then.
what and why a musical?
I think it's pretty cool
'Cause a
it's
festival?
like it's like a mini festival every day, right? And
Is it going to be rain and tense for us?
they actually have some funny ideas how I can mess things up like here and there. So it's going to be cool. But they're like a real Broadway team, and I have very little involvement in that, but it'll be fun to go to.
How hard was it for you to find a team to work with you on the new festival?
Hard. It took a year and a half to get there. I think we had a lot of people interested, and they were interested for one reason, not because of me, because of the brand name of Fyre. And since 2016, it's been the most talked about music festival in the world, obviously mostly negative. But I think people realized if you could write that, it's really hard to recreate all of that brand awareness. But ultimately, I scared them away, or the history scared them away, or they weren't willing to take the risk. So it took some time. I think people wanted to see me not behave like an asshole when I got out of jail, and it just took building that trust for a year and a half to get there.
How are you different now?
I think really focusing on relationships. I loved in the pre-life before jail. I just loved having a lot of people, whether it was employees or friends or associates, and everything almost felt very surface level and transactional. And going back to the biggest surprise in prison, where I met 3 or 4 lifelong friends. I think I'm finding more happiness out of having a smaller group of people who I really trust, rather than 100 people who are there for a good time, as was I, right? So I think I'm trying to remove that transactional large group of people mentality and just go deep with a smaller number.
Yeah, because if I think about it, I remember seeing posts of you taking a lot of trips to the Bahamas to get ready for this festival, and there was definitely a lot of people enjoying themselves and coming with you. And so it does make you look at things differently when
I found self-worth by trying to be cool to a large number of people, whereas now I'm trying to find it by being trusted by 10 people, which I think is way cooler.
So there were definitely people who stood by your side when you went to prison.
For sure. I think the weirdest thing was there was the people who I didn't expect. If I had a guess before this happened, hey, if you're going to jail, who would still be there? I probably would have gotten every single person wrong.
Who was still there?
A few childhood friends,
The one who suggested the festival?
Not him, actually.
Okay.
He's ironically gone. So that's funny. But a few childhood friends, a few work friends. It was a weird, definitely a surprising mix. But, you have to respect those who did that.
Now, as far as your personal financial situation, what is that like for you now?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. So every month I have to pay back to restitution, which were the investors who were lost. And then there are probably 20 people who aren't counted in that restitution too that I make payments to every month. So it's there's a lot of people out there. I do half my time as marketing work. So I help brands, some young artists with their marketing. And the other half the time is all working on the Fyre projects.
Speaking of which, let's talk about this. Sleepy Hollow and Chef G.
Yeah.
You are the one that brought them out for this Trump rally in the Bronx. Is that true?
Yeah, I think I just love bringing different people together, and all of my best moments in life, outside of the mistakes, were made when people from different backgrounds or different experiences came together. Those are the best ideas. Those are the best relationships.
Please explain to me how that happened, though. What was that conversation like? Because as we know, Donald Trump himself has a lot going on when it comes to court. And, for me personally, that's a scary thing to me. So I want to know what that conversation was like for you to get them to come out. Were they already supportive of Trump? And you were like, look, let's go do this rally, and I want to know your own thoughts.
The Trump rally was the first time a president has done a rally in the Bronx since Ronald Reagan. So I thought it was kind of this historical, whatever your politics are, it's probably this historical New York moment. And I think a great way to capitalize and kind of make history was to bring, New York rap to the Bronx. There were probably 35 artists who asked me to come to that rally.
Really?
So
why do you think people are so enamored with Donald Trump still? Especially, given everything that's been happening. And, we just saw this whole hush money trial, and he was just convicted and found guilty, and a lot of things that he's said and done in the past. But what is it that you think leads people to believe that, he is the person they would want to rally behind?
I think I'm not educated enough on the politics side, but on the cultural side, like people, like being part of history is exciting. And like there is a movement. I think people aren't happy with, how things have gone over the past couple of years, and they want to be heard. So if you can go to a rally, or if you can go get support online and you can be heard, I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of artists. And like it helps them amplify their message. But I was shocked. I think I made a couple of phone calls, and literally my phone blew up, and there was dozens of artists who like really wanted to show their support. And
like who else wanted to show their support?
I'm not going to drop people's names,
drop
but
people's
I
names
think like every single drill artist in New York wanted to be there.
Oh, wow. That is very interesting to me. So you still live in New York now?
I still live in New York, yes.
Okay. So what are the restrictions and the rules for you when it comes to traveling, when it comes to what you can and can't do?
So
you still have probation officer?
I still have probation. I can't leave New York without permission. So, like, for example, the fight last week was in Austin, so I had to get permission to go and fight.
Okay.
And then I think another year or so left of probation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you going to fight again?
I'm definitely going to fight again. I'd love to fight JaRule. Like, that fight would pay so many people back. You have no idea the kind of money that would raise for the Bahamas or restitution. I would give every penny of it back.
Did you ask him?
Have
you tried to reach out?
I called him out on Academics' podcast like a year ago. I'm like, yeah, he didn't respond.
The other thing that you did, though, I saw you saying that you would love for 50 Cent to perform.
Oh, 50 Cent has to perform at Fyre for sure.
Now, you don't think that's something that's going to make JaRule be like, that's, because that's obviously poking the bear.
I think it's just so
how
much
they don't like each other.
Yeah.
That leads me to believe that you don't like JaRule.
I'm not going to say that, but I think, 50 Cent, you have an open invitation to come and perform at Fyre too.
Oh my gosh, would you fight 50 Cent?
Sorry? No, I would never fight 50 Cent.
So you think you could beat JaRule?
I think 50 Cent should train me for the JaRule fight.
Oh my gosh. Well, listen, what else do you have going on? Because I saw you also post something, a marketing deal that you closed that was something big. So.
Yeah, just doing a lot of marketing work to pay the bills. Fyre Festival is more like the long-term game. For better or worse, just helping a lot of like venture capital backed companies and a lot of startups with their marketing stuff. But really excited for Fyre too. Excited to get back into the pit and fight again. And
oh my gosh.
I'm excited to take you to the Broadway musical when that airs.
Oh my gosh. So. All right, so let's talk about everything that we talked about. So you have a Broadway musical coming. Does it have a title yet?
I don't think so. At least they didn't tell me. So I don't know.
Fyre Festival, the musical. I guess it makes sense.
The documentary is called After the Fire.
Okay. So, After the Fire is the documentary. How far along is that?
We're wrapping it up now. I think the fight was probably the closing scene for that first season of the doc.
Okay, so then you have the marketing. Yeah. Obviously, you have the Fyre Festival 2 happening. Yeah. You're going to announce that this summer.
Yes.
When is it taking place?
Next year in the Caribbean.
Okay, next year in the Caribbean. Okay, and then what else did we miss? Anything else?
That's pretty much it.
All right. Yeah. Well, that's a lot going on for you right now. So it's going to be interesting to see the whole bounce back. But I was really interested to see, I saw on a podcast you were also talking about how you view people in prison too now, after having been there and personally met people.
Yes.
Who you just feel like a lot of times, like you said, people get backed into a corner and they do things, and that definitely has changed your perception.
No matter who you are, if you are desperate, like you are going to make a mistake. And I don't care, educated, not educated, rich, poor, like a desperate person does stupid things. And unfortunately, most people in prison were desperate and they made a mistake, whether it was selling drugs or, committing fraud. And like, it's like hard to say which is worse at that point. And I think like society probably has that wrong. I think most of the critics, if they were in the same shoes as the people who I met in prison, would have probably done the same thing.
You can't even say what you would do in a situation.
You might have done worse, right?
Yeah, people's circumstances do matter a lot. What does your family think about all of this? When you're at family gatherings, when they see you, what do they say? Super
tough. I'm from like a suburban New Jersey town, not inside the city, so they don't have exposure to the prison world. They don't have exposure to the music world. They don't have exposure to the fighting world. So a lot of it just seems kind of crazy.
Everybody into everything.
Exactly. It's like a little out of the ordinary from no matter what we do. So I've already confused them enough.
All right. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was an interesting conversation for me, just because it does feel like you do have remorse for the people who did suffer a lot. I will say, when everything was happening, I think that people didn't feel bad for people who bought the tickets, because they're like, oh, these rich, mostly white people got on a plane and paid all this money to go someplace and it didn't work out. And so I think people didn't, but we did feel remorse for the people who suffered from the island, who had kind of put their all into it. Because it kind of was like, they were calling it the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
for people that were out there. And it was hard for people to get off the island, when they were stuck there. But I did see you say that some people got married and hooked up.
It's just crazy. I met 3 people, like, randomly in the streets who said they met at Fyre Festival and got married because of it. Like, one of them invited me to their wedding. So,
oh, my God. Well,
crazy.
people can make,
good out of bad.
Yeah.
But the most
lemonade
important, I hate to pick favorites, but I think the Bahamians who are owed and worked, like, that is my priority. I'm like, that is something I probably spend most of my week discussing and dealing with that.
Can you go there still?
I don't know. I definitely would need permission from the U.S. side to travel internationally. I'm not sure about the Bahamas side. So
would you want to go?
As soon as my probation is up, I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
A year. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Angela.
I'm going to be paying attention to everything that you're doing. All right. Don't let us down, Billy.
At the next Fyre office, you'll be there to open it back up again.
Oh, God. I might be bad luck. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's way up.